is a self-proclaimed expert on Brad Pitt, and the reason why I say that is because I woke up one day and just gave myself the title. Anyways, I've read a bunch of his interviews, so I'm kind of like, my favorite thing ever is to read a celebrity interview and kind of like dissect what it says about their personality, who they are as a person. Brad Pitt very rarely gives interviews. I almost always read them or watch them, and he's an interesting person to me. Lost interest in him over the past few years. I haven't been keeping up with him so aggressively, but I'm seeing the headlines about him in his JQ interview, I think it was, where he is talking about drinking again after having been sober for 7 years. In this day and age, in this current climate, very specifically with these new young adults, right? Like people from the ages of like 17 to like 26 in that 10-year age range, right? Sobriety to me is a very interesting public performance. I talked about this a while back when Chrissy Teigen came out and said that she went back to drinking as well and had to kind of put out that formal public apology. My opinion on it hasn't really changed. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional. Obviously, I'm not with you every single day of your life. I don't know what your life was like. I don't know what your rock bottom was like. So, some of you can argue otherwise. My general consensus is that I don't think that this many of you are alcoholics. And with Brad Pitt specifically, I never thought that Brad Pitt was an alcoholic. I think Brad Pitt is a man who did something really disgusting, and the entire public was giving him so much flack for it. And alcoholism is a disease, and it was an easy thing to hide behind as a way to evade any kind of accountability. Alcoholism is an illness, and you cannot blame an alcoholic. Yes, obviously, we still hold them accountable for their actions, but we do show them a bit of compassion to be like, well, they were deep in addiction. Like, it's unfortunate they did this and it was terrible and it was horrible, but that's not who they really are, right? That's who addiction made them become. In the interviews in the past that I've read about Brad Pitt has talked about his upbringing. He's talked about his family. He is at the very minimum, kind of weird about his dad, right? And it seems like they have a kind of awkward relationship, to say at best. I think people who have weird and estranged relationships with their parents, even if they're not estranged, if their relationship is just weird, if it is kind of bumpy even a little bit, I think that as an adult, you have to be extremely self-aware. You have to be extremely self-critical. You have to be constantly be like a little bit self-deprecating to really be evaluating yourself in a way that is extremely honest, as a way to to be honest and aware, right? To be like, all right, I have this and this bad quality that I got from my mom. I have this and this bad quality that I got from my dad. Because living in a delusion that you are not your parents, that you will never become your parents, like, nope, I'm not them, it is going to leave you with a rude awakening that you are going to wake up at the age of 35, 40, whatever it is, and suddenly look in the mirror and be like, holy fuck, I'm my mom. Holy fuck, I'm my dad. Holy fuck, I've become everything that I've always hated. I think, in my personal opinion, this is very parasocial, but whatever, who cares? Again, from the stuff a bit of information I've been able to gather from like my readings and stuff, I think, in my personal opinion, Brad Pitt woke up one day and was a terrible father and was a terrible husband, looked in the mirror and was like, holy fuck, I am my father. And he never thought it would happen to him. And he could not make peace with that fact that he became everything that he's always hated. So instead, he hid behind the idea, this concept of, well, I'm an alcoholic. Well, the problem is actually that I'm an alcoholic. That this is not who I am. This is not my real personality. These are not real choices that I would have made for myself. The reason why all of this happened is because I'm an alcoholic. Now, 7 years into this act, right? Not that I think that he was acting and like lying and drinking behind closed doors. I don't think so. I think he was genuinely really sober, because I think he genuinely really believed that he was in fact an alcoholic, right? And that getting sober was going to fix all of his life problems, because his life problem was all due to alcohol and not to his own personal choices and not to who he was as a person. And now, 7 years later, when these articles are coming out about all of his kids dropping his last name, it seems like his family issues are not resolved, right? Like, you removed alcohol from the equation. It seems like your family issues are in fact not resolved. You are not suddenly the world's greatest dad and the world's greatest human being. And he's just like, fuck it, I just went back to drinking. And then he's like, in his interview, he like talks about like how he drinks casually. He'll have a glass of wine or two. It's the same exact conversation that happened with Chrissy Teigen, where Chrissy Teigen's like, yeah, like, I got to a point where like I wanted to be out dinner with my husband. I wanted to have a cocktail. So I just went back to doing that. And I wanted to be honest about that, because I didn't want people from the general public to be concerned about me and concerned that I fell off the wagon and I'm like on a downward spiral. Like, she's like, no, I just like, am better with moderation. It's the same thing that he said as well. It's like, I'm just better with moderation now. I can go back to having one or two glasses and then going about my day without having to like, black out and be excessive about it anymore. Like, being able to learn to drink in moderation, to me, is evidence that you are in fact not an alcoholic. You just went through a point in time where you were maybe drinking too much, where you probably had other problems and were masking them behind drinking. And now that you are in a better space mentally, can now go back to understanding moderation and drinking once or twice. That is in fact not an alcoholic. An alcoholic is someone who cannot say no. It's a mental disease, right? It's like, once you start, you cannot stop. So many of you will come up here and be like, when I was at my rock bottom, it was so bad. I was drinking and getting blackout drunk Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday every weekend. The only reason why I didn't drink Monday and Tuesday was because I was so hungover. It was so bad, but I'm so better now. I'm sober. It's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I'm so sorry you went through that. It's like, yeah, college was crazy. It's like, you were in college drinking like that? Like, I'm not saying that everyone has to drink like that when they're in college, right? Or that like it's absolutely necessary, or that it's something that you should keep up for 5 or 6 years of your life. But I am saying is that college is an environment that encourages excessive drinking. You are not some kind of freak going through a mental breakdown because you participated in that culture. I've been going to college and drinking too much at college since, like, let's call it the 70s. This new generation, like your generation, did not invent drinking and partying and being excessive and doing too much. You people, that's not a brand new thing that you guys all just invented. Like, why are you the only generation that's still obsessed with being extremist, that you're freaking out about it in this way? You went through an era in life where you were drinking too much and you didn't like the way that it made you feel, and now you don't want to do it anymore, right? And you're like, I don't need to drink, have fun. There's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly fine. But why do you have to use extremist language like I was a raging alcoholic? No, you weren't. Because you went through all the work of giving yourself this extreme title, right, of like going so far to make this huge decoration, now you put on this amount of like stress and this burden to carry, that now you have to be sober always, right? Like, now if you crave even a little bit of alcohol, if you crave a glass of wine, if you crave a beer on your birthday, you feel so immensely guilty about it, and like you have to carry this burden, like this is your cross to bear, because everything is all or nothing with you guys. And my argument is not that all of you are in alcoholics, that all of you, and it's like all of you are good, everybody go back to drinking. I don't know. I think it's between you and a mental health professional to figure out if that definition fits you and that's accurate to your lifestyle. But my argument is that I don't think that so many of you are. I think so many of you are self diagnosing because you're extremist. And when you decide that, going from one extreme all the way to the other opposite extreme and trying to pick between the two extremes is exhausting, and actually I should live my life and everything should just be done in moderation, and like that's where the world exists, is where everyone does things, you know what I'm saying, like just in moderation and what works for them, then you have to do exhausting shit like put out a press run about it.